heaven and hell. The speech of angels with man. 2. 251. The influx of the Lord himself with man is into his forehead, and thence into the whole face, because the forehead of man corresponds to life, and the face corresponds to all his interiors. The influx of spiritual angels with man is into his head from every direction, from the forehead and temples to the whole part containing the cerebrum, because that region of the head corresponds to intelligence. The influx of celestial angels, however, is into that part of the head containing the cerebellum, and this is called the occiput, from the ears all round even to the neck, for that region corresponds to wisdom. All the speech of angels with man enters by these ways into his thought. By this means I have perceived what angels they were who spoke with me. The forehead corresponds to celestial love, and consequently in the word signifies that love. The face corresponds to the interiors of man, which belong to thought and affection. The face is formed to a correspondence of the interiors. Consequently the face in the word signifies the interiors. 252. Those who talk with the angels of heaven also see the things that are in heaven, because they are then seeing from the light of heaven, in which light their interiors are. Also the angels through them see the things that are on the earth. Number sign, because with them heaven is conjoined to the world and the world is conjoined to heaven. For as has been said above, when angels turned themselves to man they so conjoined themselves to him that they hardly know otherwise than that the things pertaining to the man are their own, those pertaining to his speech as well as those of sight and hearing, while man, on the other hand, has no other thought than that the things that flow in through the angels are his. In such a conjunction with angels of heaven were the most ancient people on this earth, and for this reason their times were called the Golden Age. Because they acknowledged the divine under a human form, that is, the Lord, they talked with the angels of heaven as with their friends, and angels of heaven on their part talked with them as with their friends, and in them heaven and the world made one. But after those times man gradually separated himself from heaven by loving himself more than the Lord and the world more than heaven. In consequence, he began to feel the delights of the love of self and the world as separate from the delights of heaven, and finally to such an extent as to be ignorant of any other delight. Then his interiors that had been opened into heaven were closed up, while his exteriors were open to the world. When this takes place man is in light in regard to all things of the world, but in thick darkness in regard to all things of heaven. Spirits are unable to see, through man, anything that is in this solar world, but they have seen through my eyes. 253. Since those times, it is only rarely that anyone has talked with the angels of heaven, but some have talked with spirits who are not in heaven. For man's interiors and exteriors are such that they are turned either towards the Lord as their common center, or towards self, that is, backwards from the Lord. Those that are turned towards the Lord are also turned towards heaven, but those that are turned towards self are turned also towards the world, and it is with difficulty that these can be elevated. Yet the Lord does elevate them as much as possible, by a turning of the love, which is effected by means of truths from the Word. 254. I have been told how the Lord spoke with the prophets through whom the Word was given. He did not speak with them as he did with the ancients, by an influx into their interiors, but through spirits who were sent to them, whom the Lord filled with his aspect, and thus inspired the words which they dictated to the prophets. So it was not influx but dictation. As the words came forth immediately from the Lord, therefore, each one of them was filled with the divine and contains within it an internal sense, which is such that the angels of heaven perceive the words in a heavenly and spiritual sense, while men do so in a natural sense. Thus has the Lord conjoined heaven and the world by means of the Word. How spirits are filled with the divine from the Lord by aspect has also been shown. The spirit filled with the divine from the Lord does not know otherwise than that he is the Lord, and that it is the divine that is speaking, and this continues until he is finished speaking. Afterwards he perceives and acknowledges that he is a spirit, and that he spoke from the Lord and not from himself. Because this was the state of the spirits who spoke with the prophets, they said that it was Jehovah who spoke. The spirits even called themselves Jehovah, as can be confirmed not only from the prophetical but also from the historical parts of the word. 255. That the nature of the conjunction of angels and spirits with man may be understood, I am permitted to mention some notable things by which it may be illustrated and verified. When angels and spirits turn themselves to man, they do not know otherwise than that the man's language is their own and that they have no other language, for then they are there in the man's language, and not in their own, which they do not remember. But as soon as they turn themselves away from the man, they are in their own angelic and spiritual language, and know nothing about the man's language. I have had a like experience when in company with angels and in the state like theirs. I then talked with them in their language and knew nothing of my own, not remembering it. But as soon as I ceased to be in their company, I was in my own language. To another notable fact is that when angels and spirits turn themselves to a man, they are able to talk with him at any distance. They have talked with me from a distance as audibly as when they were near. But then they turn themselves away from a man and talk with each other. The man hears nothing at all of what they are saying, even if it be close to his ear. From this it was made clear that all conjunction in the spiritual world is determined by the way they turn. 3. Another notable fact is that many spirits together can talk with a man, and the man with them. For they send one of their number to the man with whom they wish to speak, and the spirit sent turns himself to the man, and the rest of them turn to their spirit and thus concentrate their thoughts, which the spirit utters. The spirit then does not know otherwise than that he is speaking from himself, and they do not know otherwise than that they are speaking. Thus also is the conjunction of many with one effected by turning towards him. But of these emissary spirits, who are also called subjects, and of communication by means of them, more will be said in subsequent pages. The spirits sent from societies of spirits to other societies are called subjects. Communications in the spiritual world are effected by such emissary spirits. The spirit, when he is sent forth, and serves as a subject, thinks from those by whom he is sent forth, and not from himself. 256. An angel or spirit is not permitted to speak with a man from his own memory, but only from the man's memory, for angels and spirits have a memory as well as man. If a spirit were to speak from his own memory with a man, the man would not know otherwise than that the thoughts then in his mind were his own, although they were the Spirit's thoughts. This would be like the recollection of something which the man had never heard or seen. That this is so has been given me to know from experience. This is the source of the belief held by some of the ancients that after some thousands of years they were to return into their former life, and into all its activities, and in fact, had returned. This they concluded because at times there came to them the sort of recollection of things that they had never seen or heard. This came from an influx from the memory of spirits into their ideas of thought. 257. There are also spirits called natural and corporeal spirits. When these come to a man they do not conjoin themselves with his thought, as other spirits do, but enter into his body, and occupy all his senses, and speak through his mouth, and act through his members, believing at the time that all things of the man are theirs. These are the spirits who possess man. But such spirits have been cast into hell by the Lord, and thus completely removed, and in consequence, such possessions are not possible today. External or bodily possessions do not exist today, as they did formerly. But internal possessions, which are of the mind, far more numerous than formerly. Man is inwardly possessed when he is filthy and scandalous thoughts about God and the neighbor, and is withheld from making them known only by external bonds, which are fear of the loss of reputation, honor, gain, and fear of the law and of loss of life. Of the devilish spirits who chiefly possess the interiors of man. Of the devilish spirits who long to possess the exteriors of man, that such are shut up in hell. Next, I will write writings in heaven. Thank you.